Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled that you're joining us today. Today, we'll be identifying 5 signs your family and staff need some TLC. And before we get started, let's do a quick introduction to Brightwheel. We're the #1 rated app for early educators. Our goal is to save you time on family communications and operations. So that means less paperwork and more time doing what you love as educators. As you can see on the screen, Brightwheel is an all-in-one solution to help you manage your center or preschool more effectively. With Brightwheel, you'll be able to communicate with families, share photos and videos to give them a window into their child's day. You'll also be able to check children in and out, and that means no more tracking families down for missing signatures, as well as manage your admissions, collect tuition online, and process payroll. This is a huge win for you, for your families, and for your staff. So improve family satisfaction, give your teachers more time with the children in the classroom, and more importantly, operate with less stress. Okay, so before we get started, I want to ground our discussion today in this quote from Dr. Becky Bailey that says, "All behavior is a form of communication." This is really important to consider when we're thinking about the signs that our staff and families are needing some extra support. The signs that we're going to be discussing are essentially behaviors that are communicating to us something that they may be needing or something that needs to be addressed. So before we dive into our 5 signs, we know from experience that this list is not exhaustive. I'm not presenting you all the possible reasons and ideas and things that we should be looking out for, but I do believe these are the most prominent signs and perhaps the most concerning signs that should be addressed immediately. And as we discuss the 5 signs, I'm going to share some daily interventions to try and share some bigger picture strategies as well that you can consider as you continue to support your families and your staff. I also want to say that I'm super appreciative of all of you who've answered a 1-question survey. We're going to try to hit as many points as we can in this 30 minutes that we do have together. So stick around as we share this time together. Sign #1. So the sign #1 that your staff is probably needing some TLC is that they're calling out frequently. And it's really critical to address if we're seeing this trend. There may be something happening behind the scenes that needs your attention. Your staff could be burnt out. There could be team friction. There could also be friction with families, and they could be feeling uninspired at work, which may be related to a burnout or job fit. Or there may be circumstances outside of work that are causing them to be disengaged. So these are all things that we want to be thinking about as we're seeing some of these trends and behaviors in our staff. What could be the root cause, and how could it be related to the work at hand, or even circumstances outside of our control? Again, this is not an exhaustive list of reasons that your staff is calling out frequently, but it may include one or even more of these reasons. So we want to get to that root cause. So let's focus on burnout. What does it look like? And what is it? So burnout is defined as a physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, negative attitudes towards one or others. And this definition, we find it in the American Psychological Association. So we want to keep a track of this, because what we know about burnout is that it's both physical and emotional. There's 2 components that we have to be looking at. It can present itself in physical symptoms as well as emotional symptoms too. The solution for burnout requires directors and staff to work in partnership to identify and proactively have these conversations to talk about next steps for alleviating it. We put so much focus on teacher-parent partnerships, but we really need to also focus on the director-supervisor partnership with staff. This is also going to be crucial in being able to pick up on these signs. Staff needs to be able to recognize burnout symptoms in themselves, like, for example, feeling exhausted, irritable, loss of interest in work. But they also need to be able to share this information with you as well, because some of these symptoms we don't actually see or feel. But as directors, we also should be able to look out for some possible signs, which may be a decrease in job performance, cynicism, right? Negative attitudes. These are things that we can pick up and address with staff as we see them. So once identified by both staff and the director, the next step is to have a conversation about what can be done. The root cause of burnout needs to be identified and come up with the most effective solution. So for example, could symptoms be alleviated with a different classroom assignment or a shift? Can the staff address the stress outside of work? Trying new relaxation techniques or new exercise routines could support, right? And so it would be up to you and to the staff in question to really discuss what can be done and what would help to alleviate some of that stress and burnout. So again, we want to focus on open and honest conversations in safe spaces that will be crucial in managing the burnout and preventing it. And I want to just say right outright that this sounds really easy in theory. It's really easy for me to say these words to you, but I want to be honest and say that the practice of this is a lot more challenging, right? When you're actually in the midst of dealing with burnout, maybe it's not just one staff, maybe it's a couple of staffs, and maybe you yourself are also experiencing it. So it's really tricky when you're thinking about burnout because it can sneak up on you, and there's ways that that doesn't necessarily show up until it's almost too late or it feels overwhelming. I also want to call out that we are in service-oriented industries as caregivers, as educators, and we're also motivated to do good, right, in our community. And oftentimes that comes at our own disadvantage because we neglect our own needs in order to care for the needs of others. And so just recognizing that that this can be tough for us to acknowledge, to recognize in ourselves and in others is important so that way we can be on top of it. And the next slide, we're going to go ahead and talk about some daily interventions that you can use using some TLC to address these issues. So something like burnout, like I mentioned before, is felt both physically and emotionally. So therefore, our approach has to address the staff physical needs as well as their emotional needs. To prevent and manage burnout or stress in the classroom, we definitely can try to include common breaks in the day with the children. And we talk a lot about this, especially when we're talking about the social emotional development of children. We talk about calm down corners, we talk about sensory play, we talk about all the ways that we can support the children and their behaviors. But the reality is that as humans, and as adults and as teachers, we also have those needs for sensory breaks as much as the children's do. And in fact, if we really dive deep and figure out ways to have these moments with the children, we will also be serving ourselves as well as the children in their social emotional needs as well. So some of those things could include deep breathing, stretch breaks with calming music, intentional water breaks while you're sitting down, sensory bottles, and other sensory activities. The trick here is that the children are doing it. How can the teacher also partake in this too, so that they are also getting that break that they need? So this is a great way to meet two different stakeholders' needs at the same time in the same place. So try to leverage that time that you're working with the children to actually get in that needed break. If the children are needing a calming break, it's safe to assume that the teachers are needing it too. So again, it's just a great way to shift the energy in the room so the teachers and the children are both aligned with their energies. Because what becomes really tough is when one person has a lot more energy than the other group, and then so we see that lack of balance, and that is also what promotes the stress. The idea here is to the second idea that I want to share is do some walk-in talks with staff. As a former director, when I sensed that there was stress or burnout looming, I would try to reach out to my staff individually to connect. So the connecting part automatically supports, but doing that in a way that that is outside of the classroom or outside of the office really does add to the well-being of your staff. So I used to do 10 to 15-minute walks with them. Sometimes I would even take them out to lunch one-on-one. But the idea is to spend time outside of the space that is causing some of that stress, right? It's some of to get yourself, your mind, and your body outside of that space. So talking while walking feels a little bit less intimidating sometimes to folks. You're making less face-to-face, and eye contact. You're also maybe talking about topics that feel more vulnerable. So this just allows you to really think about your whole body experience while you're walking. It helps regulate moods. It also helps staff with taking a break from the classroom. So I encourage as much as possible these one-on-one walks. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Haiti, this is unrealistic during the day. And I don't disagree. I think there's times where this may be impossible to do, but if you can find these moments, if you're going to bring them into your office anyways to chat, consider taking that talk outside of the classroom. And the next thing that I wanted to share is burnout and team friction. So a lot of the times we are feeling burnout could be due to team friction. And so we want to make sure that staff at all times are feeling connected and bonded to their colleagues, because otherwise this can worsen burnout symptoms and also obviously impact team dynamics. So you want to create low cost, low effort ways to create bond. And one idea is very simple and almost kind of silly, but it's a great way to get folks just kind of together, is to have a breakfast cereal potluck. Everybody brings their favorite breakfast cereal, their favorite milk, or different types, almond milk, oat milk, whatever it is that you're drinking, and share it together. Not only do folks get a chance to learn about each other and a chance to really connect with one another, but you have this basic need of eating met already. So it's relatively easy, it's low cost. It could be done, at any time and with any food item. You can have a potluck with your favorite snacks, your favorite hot drinks, your favorite cold drinks, your favorite fruit, your favorite candy. The sky is the limit here. But the idea is that everyone gets to participate, everyone gets to show something that, that they are fond of or they're excited about, and bring it and share it with the team. The next idea is to consider the staff's daily experience in their workspace and break spaces. One of the things that I feel very passionate about is the spaces that we work should be aesthetically pleasing to our eyes, to our senses, to our experiences in the classroom, because that's where we spend most of our time. So that could be maybe investing in different furniture in the break room, if that is something that your budget allows. If not, thinking about different appliances that may be needed, like a water kettle, a hot tea water kettle, for example. And if you want to make it even more low cost, you can think about nice smelling soaps in the bathrooms and lotions in the bathrooms. I know this seems small, but these little amenities, these small touches, really does support and embrace and brings folks along in their well-being. We used to have fresh flowers all around the classrooms and all around our break spaces, and a lot of the time the families will be responsible for bringing these fresh flowers. And it wasn't mandatory, but it was something that we asked our families to do. And if they felt compelled to do that, they would do that. And it would just help liven up the spaces and support with our ambiance. And I also want to share too that there's some things that we can be doing just to be thinking about our staff's well-being. I remember one time I had a boss who laid out fresh lemon, fresh turmeric, and ginger, and different teas, and a hot tea kettle during a season when everyone seemed to be getting sick. And this was super kind way of just letting us know, like, hey, we see that we're all undergoing this time of stress. We're all seem to be getting sick. Let's take care of our health. Now, sure, she was also incentivized to have us not call out, but the gesture and the way that she actually laid it out made us feel as if she cared about our well-being, which I truly believe that she did. For the last idea, we have practice gratitude. And this is an absolute must. We have a whole entire webinar on this, and this is extremely, extremely important. Many studies have shown that practicing gratitude not only improves well-being and morale, but also reduces stress, enhances teamwork, and improves productivity. There's really no magic bullet in resolving burnout, but gratitude comes really, really close. And so you really want to make sure that you're spending time doing this. And there's two easy ways to implement this on a daily basis. One is take a pic. And so that a PIC stands for positives in the community, but literally take a picture, walk around with your phone, snap some candid shots of your staff without them catching you doing it, of positive moments in their classroom. It could be between two children, it could be between the staff and the children, the staff and the staff, or just the staff on their own, whatever the case may be, big or small. At the end of the day, send a picture with a note of gratitude to the team, letting them know that you caught this wonderful, beautiful moment, and that you recognize them and appreciate the work that they're doing daily. And this is a message that you can also share with families as well on Brightwheel, just to make sure that everyone has visibility into the good that is happening, even on the most stressful days. The other idea is to have each class write down 3 good things that have happened in the day. For the classroom with older children, where they get to talk and reflect about their day, this is a great way to end the day with some gratitude, and also share it with the families to give them a look into their child's day. Families can't ignore good news. No one can. And when the staff and the children get to exercise their gratitude, they also benefit from it too, and also helps to support their relationships in the classroom. So sign number 2, that families are needing some TLCs, that families are not responding to communication. So let's dive in. What could this behavior be indicating or communicating to us? Perhaps there's too much information. This is something that we want to be mindful of when we're sending information to families. Is it too much? Perhaps the information is not relevant enough. Sometimes, in order to be able to save time, we may be over communicating things that are happening in other classrooms that are not quite as relevant to all parents, and so therefore the information is not as relevant. There may be no expectations, right? No understanding of what families should be saying or doing in response to some certain communications. And there may be no consequences. Not that their consequences would be punitive, but what is it that you're hoping families will do in response to your communication? And what happens if they don't respond? What are some things that you would do next? And how should they know that they're not meeting your expectations with regards to communication? So families also may not be feeling connected to the program. That's also another reason why we may see a lack of communication or response to communication. And families may be unhappy with their child's progress. Sometimes we see that families are kind of withdrawn when they're not satisfied with the program or satisfied with something that has happened or how something has been addressed with their child. And this is also an opportunity then to think about what is their lack of communication indicating to us. And lastly, families may have personal concerns that are going on at home. And I think this is true for many families. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a combination of things that could be happening. It could be one, it could be more, it could be none. And it could be all within our control, or it could be none within our control. So just being mindful here about the root cause is super important then to be able to respond to how you're going to get families to engage with you in your communication. So these are things that you want to definitely keep track of. And in the next slide, we're going to talk about how we can provide some TLC in these instances. So here are some ways to lean into these concerns with some TLC. First, you want to get feedback. And I think the most important thing here is that providing feedback needs to be a low lift for families. So what do I mean by that? Until you better understand why you're seeing a lack of communication, we need to start with a simple poll or a simple survey that allows families to respond quickly. To improve response rate to these polls or these surveys, consider these three things. Make it available online. You can use a Google form or a Monkey survey. They're both great options that you can get a link for and then send it via parent message on Brightwheel. You can also let them know what the time commitment is going to be. So for example, this is a 3-question survey, or it's going to take you 3 minutes or less to answer this survey. Letting them know ahead of time will allow them to say, yes, I have time for this, or I don't, or I should do this a little bit later. Let them what the goal is. What are you going to accomplish with the results? After you get the results, what are you going to do with that, with that information? And then also, of course, share the results with them too, so that they know that their voice mattered and what they had to share was important. And then the bonus tip is add an incentive for completing the survey or the poll. It's not my favorite thing, but if you need folks to kind of get into the habit of filling out your surveys or your polls, this might be a good way to get folks going, and just incentivize it a little bit might be helpful. So maybe you're doing a raffle, or maybe you're doing a class competition. Whatever class have most parents responding gets X, Y, and Z. The second idea is to be bold and reach out to families you haven't seen or heard from in a while. This is not by any means an innovative idea, but I want to just encourage you all to do this, because days go by sometimes and we haven't seen a parent or we haven't heard from a parent, and we don't really think much of it until it becomes something that becomes a little bit bigger. So we want to make sure that we are getting ahead of that. And you might consider doing this in tandem with your staff, or you might do this alone. It could be a simple message on Brightwheel via parent messaging, just checking to see how they're doing. It could be a question, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. How are things going? Or it could be a sweet personal note or momentum about their child's day. And only do this if it's authentic, obviously, because you don't want to, pretend that you had a moment with your child or see something that wasn't relevant. But at the same time, if you can relate it back to them and think that they're interested in, you're more likely to get some engagement back. So reaching out can help you understand why this family is not engaged. For example, maybe it's been really busy and they share that with you. Yeah, work is really hectic right now, and I haven't had a chance to stop by, or I haven't been able to pick up or drop off. Or maybe they're dealing with an illness or for themselves, or a family illness. In any event, we want to make sure that families are feeling connected to the program, and reaching out helps out with this feeling of being seen and heard. I also want to add that if you are a parent or a guardian that sorry, if you've seen that a parent or a guardian has changed their attitude or their demeanor towards you or your staff, you also want to check in right away. Don't let that fester because most likely there's something going on that needs your attention. The third idea is to create a low effort engagement activity that they can participate in. So during busy seasons or times where families have lost motivation to participate or get involved, we need something to kind of kickstart that up again. So one thing that you can do that is super easy to get that engagement muscle going again is really leaning in on some quick in-person polls, right? Something so simple as, how did you get to school today, right? Did you bike? Did you walk? Did you drive? Obviously, only choose this if folks are using multiple ways of getting to school. Relate the polls back to the children's experiences, right? Or the things that the children are experiencing in the classroom. So for example, what is your snack preferences? Do you prefer goldfish or do you prefer apples? Whatever the case may be, use those moments to really pull families to get to know them a little bit better and get them into this process of communicating. And the great thing is that you can use this poll and share that back with the children in the classroom. So this is how your families responded. Most of them prefer goldfish over apples. A lot of them prefer to take a nap over, having a lunch. Whatever the case may be, try these polls and see how you can start getting families back into this momentum of actually engaging and becoming interested in what's happening in the classroom. As a director, making sure that you make yourself available during pick up and drop off as much as possible is also really important. It can be at the start of the day, maybe you're offering some treats to set them off, to set their day off strong. Maybe it's a bar, maybe it's a donut, whatever the case may be. Maybe you're able to offer, again, a personal story about their child and something that you witnessed that was very sweet or very funny. These are things that you want to do naturally. Sometimes we get into the habit of catching our parents, in drop off or at pickup to discuss things that are related to paperwork or billing or other transactional things. But what we really want to do is ensure that when we're connecting with them is on a human level. So make sure that we have that warm smile, that human connection, because those things really make a difference in getting folks to be much more responsive in a relationship. And as a reminder, some families and children, are slow to warm, or they can be much more private. And so we want to find various ways to connect with them and ensure that everyone is getting some type of opportunity to connect in the way that they would like to connect. So always meet families where they are. It's so easy to assume that they're not interested, that they're disengaged, and that they wouldn't actually respond to a call if you were to make one. So just want to make sure that you are giving them various ways to connect with you and also just time to connect as well. For number 3, we have here gossiping is at an all-time high. So I really appreciate Holly Alyssa Bruno's definition of what gossiping is and what it's not. So gossiping is communicating about another person who is not present with the intention of harming that person's reputation or listening or entertaining to someone else talking about somebody else behind their back. So we want to make sure that we're clear on that, because sometimes we think that gossiping could be reporting somebody else or sharing some information that is important for the director to know or supervisor to know. And when it's necessary to talk about something that happened, that is not gossiping. Also, holding an opinion about somebody is not gossiping, but doing that intentionally behind their back in order to harm them is. And that's exactly what we want to make sure we address right away. So we also want to think about, why does gossiping happen? So Holly Alyssa Bruno goes on to say that gossiping can be a way of establishing power or by promoting a person's own spin on reality. So we want to make sure that gossip is not happening, because usually what happens is that it's eroding trust. It is a sign that there's a lack of respect going on. And what we really want to do is understand better, what is this person communicating with all this gossip? Is it that we need to have more transparency in our communication so folks are not confused, or we're not leaving folks to their own imagination to fill in the gaps on what information that they don't have? Is it that there's a perceived threat, right? And folks are really trying to get ahead of information or ahead of announcements that are going to be made so they can feel in control? Is it that there's a lack of space, safe space to share their concerns, or perhaps there's not a good way to resolve conflicts or address concerns? And then the other possibility is that gossiping sometimes is just a really cheap and immediate way to find intimacy and bond with another person. So are folks looking for ways to respond to connect with one another and don't actually have that opportunity? So whatever the case may be, we want to find the root cause of that gossiping, and we want to make sure that we put an end to it. And while we know that gossip is super toxic, I do want to say that with gossiping, there's not much that you can do here to treat it with so much compassion and TLC. We do want to make sure that we are aggressively addressing it with policies. And so make sure that you have those policies in place. But on the other hand, there are ways to keep gossip at bay. For example, you want to increase positive gossip. This means that you're giving positive praise about your staff behind their back. So that way we're giving something good to spread around. We also want to model, practice, and share go-to responses with our staff that they can use when they're faced with gossip. So for example, that sounds really hard. Have you tried sharing this with this person personally? And there's also many more ideas that you can come up with, but I am a big fan of having the team brainstorm these own ideas because then they're more likely to use it. If it's in language that they're not comfortable using or things that they would never say, it's never going to get used. So have a time to brainstorm with staff about how we can respond to someone who is gossiping so that we don't get caught in that gossip. And then lastly, create opportunities for bonding and building trusting relationships. It's harder to gossip about someone when there's respect and there's a relationship because there's actually more of a desire to help problem solve and work things out. For number 4, we see more conflicts in the community. And here's some reasons why you may be seeing more conflicts. There's culture decline in the program. There's no conflict resolution process in place. There's poor team dynamics. There's poor communication, and there's lack of trust. So for the record, I think conflicts can be expected, and I think they're okay to have. And these help to actually deepen relationships when we are able to actually resolve our conflicts. And that's what I really want to focus on in our next slide. You want to check in ASAP when you are observing changes in behaviors, again, in your staff and in your families. This can look like disagreements or concerns, or this can look like attitudes or behaviors that are changing. These are usually a first sign that something is happening, and you want to discuss this with the person that you are observing it, whether the conflict involves you or not. You also want to have an understanding of who's involved in the conflict. It could be teachers and families. It could be teachers and teachers. You want to approach them and figure out what are some of the next steps that we need in order to resolve this conflict. I'm a big fan of meeting all together in person or at the very least via Zoom, because I've found by personal experience and also in general, it is not good practice to play telephone. It is a disservice to everyone who is in a conflict when you're going back and forth trying to mediate a problem without the actual folks being in person and discussing the issues at hand. I also want to encourage you all to encourage within your staff and your families respectful transparency. And you do that by creating a safe space to discuss feelings and concerns without judgment. So let families know this is a safe space and we want to discuss this. And let and teachers know that they're also able to share their concerns openly and honestly. And the last one is that you want to honor and highlight the value in disagreements. Again, disagreements can be helpful to deepen those relationships when handled appropriately. And being able to share your feelings and concerns openly and being able to take on someone else's perspective is an actual skill set. And that needs to be mastered in order to be able to resolve conflicts appropriately. So with practice, conflicts become less aversive and more of an opportunity to deepen that relationship and take it to the next level. Okay. In the interest of time, we're going to move on from this question, but I did want to get to our 5th and last sign, which is as a director, supervisor, or leader, if you're feeling burned out or checked out, this is an important sign that you should not ignore. If you're feeling this way, there's a good chance that your teachers are also feeling stressed out and burned out, and that your families are also feeling some of this. So some of the behaviors that you may be experiencing or feeling may look like you have your office door closed more often than not. You're delaying communication with staff and with families because you don't necessarily want to deal with what is at hand, right? And you may be less productive as a result. You may also be putting off classroom visits. Maybe you're concerned about how this is going to add to your list of things to do. Maybe you've lost your why in the process of this feeling of stress and burnout. And your relationships at work and at home are becoming strained. If you're feeling this way, you should address this right away. Actually, above all the other signs, you need to address this one first. Much like on an airplane, when we're advised to put on our own oxygen mask before we help others, we need to think about our own stress in the same way, so that we're not, so that we are more effective in helping others. Because if we don't help ourselves, we're really no use to others. So let's dive into the next slide about what you can do to support yourself here. And I do see that the time is coming to a close very soon. So if you have to hop off, no worries. I'll send you the deck as well as the webinar recording. But if you can stay with us for a little bit more, we only have one more slide before we do our wrap up. To combat stress, you want to take a look at self-care routines and consider your focus on your sleep, your nutrition, and your exercise. I know we hear this all the time, but this is absolutely and positively true in combating stress. Without these components, it can only spiral more. Take time to do your favorite and cup-filling activities, and remember to take your breaks. And here's some other ideas. Let your humans show. Pretending that everything is all right when it's not, to save face with your families and your staff, actually requires more energy than for you to show vulnerability on tough days. And when you're showing vulnerability on tough days, you're actually modeling what it looks like to have off days, but also to take care of yourself and to bounce back. And it's also easier to relate to a human than it is to a superhero. So you do much more good when you're being transparent with how you're feeling. And you also want to show transparency in your communication with staff and families. When there's hardships and when there's tough times in your community, for example, maybe a staff is leaving mid-year and you're having to find a replacement, transparency helps others deal with change and adapt to a new normal. And it also signals to your staff and to your families that you trust them to rise above that hardship. The third one is to ask for help. I know this can be a really, really hard one. And it's really hard for me too as well to ask for help. But being a leader is also delegating and recognizing talents and skills in others. So you don't have to do it all by yourself. And it's really an opportunity for staff and families to feel seen and heard in the community when you say, hey, I know you have a special talent in this. Could you potentially help me out with this? The fourth is to delay communication to increase intentional communication. And I know I just said earlier, don't procrastinate with your communication, or that may be a sign that you are burned out. But you also want to take time to thoughtfully think through communication when you're stressed, because you don't want to rush through communication. It's better to have thoughtfully thought about how you're communicating something, especially if it's tough, especially if it's not easy, than to rush through a communication that could leave folks more confused and more stressed out. The last thing that I want to share here is that I was once given very wise advice from a former executive with over 30 years of experience in the field. She told me that at the beginning of my career as a director, that I should consider taking a morning off for myself to do something that fills my cup, whether it would be, exercising, or whether it be, a special hobby that I took up, but to do it for myself. And then that way, at least I have some protected time during my week where I am taking care of myself. And, I honestly didn't take that advice to heart, or I didn't at least see how I could do that with all the responsibilities that I had. But in reflection and looking back, I really wish I did. So I'm passing that along to you in case you need to hear that today. Take time to do self-care. So let's talk about some big picture strategies here that you want to consider. You want to consider conducting pulse check-ins with families and staff regularly. One of my favorite ones is start, stop, continue. What does that mean? What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we continue doing? By asking these very easy critical questions, you get so much feedback back, and you're able to actually take action on this feedback. And that is what you want. Whatever questions, whatever surveys that you're passing out, you want to make sure that they're actionable. The question that you're asking, will it help you to actually take action on it? And how do you need them to respond in order for you to take action on it? So start, stop, and continue is probably the easiest way to do that. Start all staff and family interactions on a human note. Leverage the verbal and the nonverbal communication. That means that if I'm coming to talk to you, watch your body language. Are you like rushing to speak to the person, or are you walking calmly and softly? And do you have a smile on your face? All of those things really signal to someone, whether or not this is going to be a positive interaction or whether it's going to be a stressful interaction. So be mindful of your verbal and nonverbal communication. Use Brightwheel to provide a variety of communication. So as we talked about before, folks need to hear in different ways at different times. And so making sure that you're leveraging the different ways that Brightwheel helps you do that is really important. So you have admin to parent messaging, you have teacher to parent messaging, you have admin to staff messaging, and you also have parent messaging that parents can send to both teachers and admins, which are all great ways to leverage different communication. You also have reminders and alerts, announcements, and newsletters. Newsletters being a longer form of communication that you can also use to recap what's happening in the life of the school. This is really important too. If families maybe pick one day a week that they come down and they sit down to maybe drink their coffee on Sunday mornings to get caught up in what's happening in the life of their children at school. The next thing you want to do is prioritize well-being and belonging. And this one you really want to brainstorm with your family and staff. I can give you a list of things that you can do to support bonding with your teachers and the teams and your family. But at the end of the day, they need to be invested in those ideas because they're going to be the ones to benefit from those ideas. So brainstorm with them. What would they be excited to do? What would they be excited to join and participate in? And that way they are truly getting the benefit from the ideas that are implementing. The other idea is to have a conflict resolution process in place for adults and for children. I feel really, really strongly about this. I have linked onto the deck here a previous webinar that we did focusing only on resolving conflicts and strengthening relationships with family, staff, and children. So once you receive the presentation, you'll be able to click on that link and have access to that. I highly recommend that you take a look at this if you don't already have a conflict resolution process in place. Why this is important? It is super important because at the end of the day, everyone approaches conflict in a different way, whether it be from our experience, our culture, our personal preference, or even our conflict tolerance. But when we have a process in place, we know how we're all going to be approaching that process and that conflict resolution, and it just helps us to arrive to a solution faster. So you also want to involve staff and families in decision making whenever possible. And this is the very obvious reason for this is that when someone is involved in the decision making process, they take much more ownership on the responsibilities and the outcomes, right, of whatever decisions you have made. And that's where engagement really happens. So getting folks to really be engaged is to really inform them and also keep them in the decision making process. Now, not all decisions are open for discussion or negotiation or should be in the hands of all of your stakeholders, but the ones that are appropriate, it would be great to start thinking about ways to encourage your staff and your families to get involved in that process. And then the last is to invest in workplace culture. Opportunities to grow, belong, and have fun are pivotal in making sure that your team are bonded, that they're collaborating with one another, and it's probably the most effective retention tool that you have, even over salaries. There's been many polls done, research done that indicates that workplace culture and connection to the team is probably the most important thing to an employee over salary. So you want to make sure to leverage that workplace culture and make sure that you have a positive one set up for your staff. I want to go ahead and wrap up in the interest of time and get to your certificates and announcements. Our first announcement is we have a wonderful webinar coming up, as it is all about elevating family communication and getting inspired with a multi-site preschools approach. And so we really want to make sure that you sign up for this webinar if you're interested in joining, especially if you have questions about family engagement. So sign up and we'll share that link with you in the chat. And I also want to thank you so much for attending this webinar. I'm super excited to give your certificate of attendance now. You want to go to the link that Natalie's going to go ahead and share with you in the chat. It is mybrightwheel.com/webinar 32024. Again, it's mybrightwheel.com/webinar 32024. And I'm going to linger here for just a second so that make sure that everyone has access to that link. And once you click on it, you should be able to type in your own name. And at that point, you can print it out or save it as a PDF for your own records. And lastly, when you close out of today's webinar, a survey will automatically pop up on your screen. If you could take that minute or two to fill it out, we would love to hear your thoughts on today's session, as well as any other suggestions that you may have for future webinars. More than anything, we want to continue to make great and helpful webinars for you all. So please fill out that survey and let us know how we did today. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you're not yet using Brightwheel, but you're interested to learn more about how Brightwheel can help your center, please do request a demo or get a pricing for your center. You can either scan the QR code, and Natalie's also going to share the links in the chat if that's easier for you. You just have to fill out a quick form, and someone from our team will reach out to do a customized walkthrough with you and answer all of your questions. I'm just going to linger here for a minute as you all receive the links in the chat, as well as have the opportunity to scan either QR code if you're interested. And we have now reached the end of our webinar. We're so thankful that you had the chance to join us today. We sincerely appreciate all the hard work that you do. You're doing an amazing job. Just by reading all of your wonderful survey responses, I know that you care deeply about the work that you're doing and care deeply about your families and your staff. And so we thank you for all the hard work that you do, and we hope that you took away some strategies today to continue the good work. Thank you all. Have a great week.